So good morning, everyone. My name is Robin Rowan. I am the lobbyist for the Big I, Minnesota, and I'd like to welcome you to our Cybersecurity Summit. I think the number of attendees here is a testament to how timely this topic is, and as many of you know, cybersecurity has also been a hot topic at the legislature over the past 2 years. Not maybe a headline-grabbing hot topic, but a hot topic nonetheless. And over the past 2 years, the Department of Commerce has made enacting the NAIC's Insurance Data Security Model Law a priority for Minnesota. So correspondingly, our priority has been to make sure that the law that's enacted here works for our member agents and their clients. And we believe we succeeded in doing that. We worked very closely with the Department of Commerce, with key legislators and other stakeholders to make sure that the law that passed was, right now, it's the most workable version for agents in the country. So we're very pleased about that. We have a great series of speakers for you today who will talk about your responsibilities under the new law, as well as protecting your agencies and your clients from cyber risk. I'm going to briefly introduce our speakers, and I'll encourage them to share more about their background and their experience during their presentations. First up is John Imordino, who is Senior VP with Arlington Rowe and the administrator of the Big I Cyber Secure program. Next up, we have Matt Vatter, the Assistant Commissioner of Enforcement for the Minnesota Department of Commerce. And we will also be hearing from the experts at CyberFin, Chris Steffel, Daniel Metcalf, and Mike Kennedy. A couple of housekeeping notes. There's going to be a break every hour. The session is being recorded, so please, when you ask questions, use the mic. There's one right back there. And then perhaps most importantly, there's lunch outside at 1. I was going to close with a joke tying in the pirate theme of the expo and cybersecurity, but I was having a lot of trouble. In fact, I was trying them out on my husband this morning and he left the room. So all I could come up with was, you should pay attention or Matt Vatter will make you walk the plank. That's the best I could do. So I'm going to spare you any more of my bad pirate jokes, and please enjoy the program. Thank you.
Well, good morning. One thing I'd like to do real quick here is Robin, as you guys know, Robin is the lobbyist here for the state of Minnesota. And as this NAIC model law was coming out, she was very instrumental and successful in actually modifying some of the wording in the NAIC model law for what the law is here today. A couple things that she was able to accomplish is the original law, I do believe, stated that every agency that had 10 or less employees had to comply. She's been successful in getting some wording changed to its 25 or less employees. There also was a requirement that if you have a breach, you have to notify the commissioner. And that original timeline, I think, was set somewhere around 72 hours, and now it's actually set for 5 days. So how about a round of applause for Robin and her hard work here for our independent agents? Okay, very good. You guys in the cheap seats hear me all right? All right, perfect. All right. Well, good morning. I do appreciate everybody taking time out of their busy schedule to come here today, and hopefully, apparently you're here for one of two reasons. One is that you're concerned about cybersecurity, concerned about all the different cyber laws, what's happening out there with ransomware and social engineering, and you wanted to come here today to try to learn a little bit more so that you can go back and protect your agencies, help protect your insureds, and do what the right thing is to do. Hopefully that's one of the reasons why you're here. Or the second thing is that you just really needed 2 hours of CE and there weren't any other options. So no matter what it is, I appreciate you guys spending the time here with us today to go over some of this. Let me start my timer, otherwise I'll be talking straight through this. I'm going to start you here with this. Imagine that you come in one day into your office and you see this on every screen. Those of you that have been victimized by these cyber criminals may have already seen something like this or a variation of it. But this is what happens when you walk in, and this is the type of note that you're going to see. It's usually like a README text that you have to open up, and then they introduce themselves and they tell you what it is that they've done. What would you do? You now have no data. You can't access your servers. You can't get to a client phone list. You can't even get to your cyber policy to call for help. Rule number one, my recommendation to everybody, print your cyber policy, put it in a drawer somewhere, because when this happens, you're not going to be able to get to it. Okay? So take a look at it. They tell you that all of your files are currently encrypted. And this here is the Conti strain. Conti is one of the cyber criminal organizations that are out there. Currently, there are over 100 criminals that are out there, criminal gangs. We're going to talk a little bit later on today about it and help you understand the sophistication of these extortionists that are out there, how it used to be very simple and now it's very complex. And then they're going to tell you, as you will know, if you don't already, just Google it. All of the data has been encrypted by our software and cannot be removed by any means without containing our team directly. So they take all of your information and they scramble it up like alphabet soup. You can't read it, you can't identify it, you can't decipher it. The only way that you're going to be able to sit there and get that information back is if you pay them the ransom, and then they're going to give you the secret decoder ring, which is going to help you unscramble all of your data that they have, that they've already encrypted. To make sure that we really get your data back, we offer you to decrypt 2 random files. So these guys, what they want to do is they want to sit there and make sure that you know that they're for real. So you send them over a couple files, they'll decrypt it and show you that, yes, you can get your information back if you sit there and you work with them. They tell you a little bit about the version and about the Tor version and how you can access Tor to get in there to communicate with them, because you're usually communicating through a website or a chat box. And we'll talk a little bit later. These chat boxes are usually housed by these call centers out in India or someplace else. They're real live organizations that are sitting there that you'd be dealing with on this. And then they also tell you down there at the bottom is that you should be aware, just in case, if you ignore, we've downloaded a pack of your internal data. So not only have they taken all of your current data and encrypted it, they've also made a copy for themselves to have. So if you decide that you don't want to pay them for the extortion, no worries. Now they're going to dump your data into the public domain. You're going to pay them one way or another. So what would you do if you had no access to any of your information? Are your clients going to leave? You're going to have some business loss? Do you know where to start? That's what we're going to talk a little bit about here today, because this is real and this is exploding. So today we're going to go through a lot of the different, I'm going to take you guys from the beginning. I've been working into cyberspace early on since about 2004, 2006. I have seen everything basically come a complete circle, full circle, from where it used to be, what we've done over the years and where it is today. We're going to talk a little bit to get you guys up to speed on some of the different extortion that is happening out there, some of the different social engineering, some of the statistics, so that you guys understand that this is something that is real. This is something that can take an organization down, not just yours, but your clients. 60% of businesses that have some form of a cyber breach usually go out of business within 6 months, especially if they do not have insurance. Okay? But yet only about 10 to 25% of the organizations purchase cyber insurance. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So we're going to go through some of that. And then we're going to talk about how everything has evolved more into computer security, different types of laws that are requiring us to keep minimum security standards. And then we're going to sit there and end towards the end of it, and we're going to talk about the NAIC model law very briefly. And then we're going to sit there and tag in Matt, and Matt's going to sit there and help us go through what the new Minnesota data security law looks like, what type of compliance requirements there is going to be, and how it is that we can comply. And we're also going to discuss a little bit about some of the stuff that we have on our website. That is the Minnesota Association's website that will help you with compliance. Some different templates that will help guide you and get you going in the right direction. And then we're going to finish off today with the folks from CyberFin. They're going to help bring up to speed on some of the things that they have available through their cybersecurity practices that they can sit there and help and mitigate a lot of this from happening. All right, so it's like I'm kind of like the insurance side. So when something happens, you call me. But you know what? You don't want to get there, and that's what people like CyberFin are all about. It's about being proactive and protecting your assets well in advance, okay? All right, so throughout today's presentation, 2 things. One, I am so excited about being able to do a live presentation. I get tired of talking to myself behind a video screen, huh? This is great out here today. So, and the other thing is I get tired of hearing myself talk. I encourage questions. We are here. We have a panel up here sitting here. We can answer questions at any time during the presentation. Don't wait for the end. You have a question about anything, even if you want to talk. I don't think we can talk about how to infuse vodka with grapefruit because we have the Department of Commerce here, so we have to kind of stick to the script. But for the most part, whatever you guys want have whatever questions, feel free to ask them. All right, you guys ready? We're going to talk a little bit right now about it's the fastest growing crime. Would you guys agree with that? Huh? Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It really is. And let me tell you about when it first started. When I first started seeing it, it was really a whole bunch of kids were like cruising around in cubicle, industrial warehouse spaces, trying to hack into businesses' Wi-Fi's just for fun. It was your 40-year-old sitting down in his mom's basement in fuzzy slippers back behind a computer trying to hack into your computer system to steal credit cards. Really, to me, that's where it all really started. And I know Matt has a tremendous experience, and he's been dealing in this space. You've been in it a lot longer than I have, haven't you? How many years you been in it? 2010? Yeah. So considerable amount of experience. So he's seen a lot of stuff. That, I mean, has it changed drastically over the years?
Like you said, it's been like you said earlier, it has come full circle where, you know, it used to be very low-level, non-complex, easy script kind of attacks on low-hanging fruit. Then we saw it progress to become very complex attacks on high-end organizations, government entities, critical infrastructure, and things of that nature, where now we're kind of seeing it come back to where they're using some old techniques, some old script, and again, looking for low-hanging fruit, and then using what has been learned over the last 10 to 15 years to migrate across systems.
Yeah. And guess who's the low-hanging fruit? I'm the only one that's going to raise my hand. Come on, yeah. I mean, you know, who's not the low-hanging fruit? Everybody is anymore. But when it first started out, it was all about credit cards. You know, I mean, you guys remember the Target breach, right? I mean, that was all about credit cards. And then they would monetize the credit cards on the dark web. They would post them up, buy and sell them like it was eBay, and that's where the criminals really were focusing on. So after several years, they started to try to figure out, the criminals are always trying to figure out the next way to monetize the information that they take or the practices that they are doing so that they can make more money. They're businesses. That's all they're trying to do is increase their P&L. Okay, so they started out with credit cards. From there, they rolled over and they said, you know what? If I'm only going to get 50 cents or $1 on the dark web per credit card, why don't I move into identities? So now I'm going to take the credit card and the rest of their identity, including social security number, and I'm going to start capturing all of that in large amounts. I'm going to start taking that data, selling that on the dark web. And as I sell that on the dark web, I might be able to get $14 per person. You know, so now they have to sit there and buy and sell them in bulk. And that's really the direction that everybody was moving into. And then along came ransomware version 1.0. And ransomware 1.0 was really pretty easy. A lot of the IT professionals actually already had to decrypt their code in their back pocket, so when somebody got encrypted, they knew how to sit there and release it and get the information back. That's how broad it was. And it was easy. You sit there and you could just unplug it from the internet, erase your system, and upload from your backups. That's how simple it was back then. The demands, on average, were running about $1,000, $2,000. So none of the carriers were really getting hit that hard. And it was easy for everybody to sit there and be proactive to mitigate any type of a loss. So the ransomware now, they're making $1,000, $2,000 a piece. Well, they figure, okay, they've got to move on down the road and try to figure out ways of making even more money. So now they started moving into that little thing called social engineering, right? A big thing with the phishing emails. It's where I pretend to be somebody else. I send you an email and ask you to transfer monies into my bank account, and you do it. They started working on these targeted attacks, more along the lines of the spear phishing, where they would go after the C-suite. And through the spear phishing attacks, they would start getting more and more, and it was a greater way for them to monetize the money. From there, they moved on to now where it is we are today, this new ransomware attacks that are happening out there. And this new is, I created the Big I Cyber Secure program. And some of you may have actually have insurance here through the State Association for your cyber. That was a program that I created many years ago. And through that program, we insure thousands of insurance agents, not here just in Minnesota, but in a bunch of other states here in the U.S. I, unfortunately, have seen way too many breaches happen. And I've been part of them one way or another in each step that they've gone through. So the pain that I see that happens when a ransom attack actually happens is real. And these are the stories that I sit there and share with you. And we're going to talk about this new ransomware attack a little bit later and tell you how sophisticated it is. The one thing that I'm a little bit concerned about right now is this thing called cryptojacking. Anybody here familiar with cryptojacking? A couple of you? Okay. Cryptojacking is really when the bad guy takes over your computer system and they use your power, your computer power, to actually mine for cryptocurrencies. Back in 2018, when there was a spike in cryptocurrency, the cost of Bitcoin shot up, cryptojacking became one of the #1 threat actors. Okay, ransomware fell off to the side, cryptojacking started coming up. Why? Because the bad guys can make more money mining for Bitcoin, using your computer system, mining for Bitcoin, than they could for running an extortion against you. Now, since then, Bitcoin has dropped a little bit in value, not right now, but since 2019, it has dropped in value, and then the new ransomware variant started coming into play. What my concern is right around the corner, what's the going rate right now of Bitcoin? 45,000? 45,000, what was it 2 months ago? 65,000? Right? So, I mean, it's got as high as 65,000. Right now, it's 45,000. So is it a lot more cost-effective for the bad guys to use your power to mine for Bitcoin at 45,000 a piece? Or are they going to be able to make more money extorting you and unloading ransomware? So I'm looking, that's my guess. My guess is maybe next year we'll be here talking a little bit more in depth. I'll be telling you how to mine for Bitcoin. But, you know, this year right now, we're still going to focus on our ransomware and our social engineering. The number 2 areas right now that we're being attacked is we're looking at social engineering, the phishing emails, and then we're also looking at the ransomware. Ransomware is roughly about 54% of all the attacks that I see, and the social engineering schemes runs right around 42%. So between those two right there, that's virtually what's taken down the entire cyber insurance market. The ransomware is basically deployed by phishing emails and remote desktop protocol, RDP. You might hear a lot about that. We'll get into it a little bit more here as we go. And then the social engineering is all about the business email compromise and funds transfer fraud. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go here as well. Because of the explosion in these areas, social engineering and ransomware, it has caused a tremendous amount of regulatory change in the environment. We have states, we have federal governments all trying to make changes in all the laws that are happening out there. And this is creating heartburn for me. I mean, I live in this space, and it's a juggling act to try to juggle and coordinate all of these different laws, the different state notification laws, these different cybersecurity laws that we're looking at. And it's like, how do you put them all together? Well, that's what we're going to talk today. Hopefully we'll be able to get a little bit more clarification on what's going on with them. It's the fastest growing form of insurance coverage, no doubt about it. You know, it's very volatile in the marketplace right now, and we'll continue to go through it. Right now, there's over 192 U.S. insurers. There's actually more than that. It's 192 that have a standalone, and 51% of them, or five of the carriers, actually write 51% of the total written premium, and the top 10 are 69%. So is it a good thing or a bad thing that we have all these different insurance carriers? This would be the class participation section of the program. Yes, it's good? I got a yes. I got a yes. Do I hear another yes? Do I hear a no? How about a no? Do I get a no? I got a no. I got a no. I got a yes. I got another yes. I got a no. Do I get another no? Do I? Nothing? It's yes or no. It's yes because you have the options, but it's no because out of those 192, 182 of them don't know what the heck they're doing, right? So they're just getting into the place just to sit there and try to buy up some premium, but when they have a loss, what happens? Okay? Anybody got a calculator on them? Anyone? Calculator? Okay. All right, let's go, Roberto. Here, let's do this real quick. Let's say we are a new insurance agency, one of these new ones that are getting in to buy a premium. And let's say we're just small, we've got 10 million in premium. Now we got 10 million in premium. At the average premium per policy of $1,500 is how many policy holders do we have? Let's just say small business, 10 million, we're looking at 150. 1,500, yeah. 6,700, about 6,700 policyholders, right? So if we get 6,700 policyholders, what percentage of policyholders are usually getting infected with some sort of ransom attack? Anybody? 2%? 73%? 73%? Yeah, that's 73% in loss ratio, yeah. So let's just say that on average, let's take a look at 20%. 20% are going to get hit. So if 20% get hit and the average cost to comply with one of those is $750,000 for a small breach, we're just talking about small people, small agencies, small businesses. So what is 750,000 times, let's say 20%, what, 1,200? Mm-hmm. $900 million. So they're taking in 10, getting hit with 900 based off of all the volatility that's been happening here in the marketplace. So is it a good thing or a bad thing that we have 182 that are just dabbling in the world of cyber? That's how I kind of look at it, right? That's what's happening in the marketplace. This is why we're seeing a tremendous amount of volatility, and we're seeing all the carriers getting off and moving around. I was actually I didn't participate. I was one of you guys sitting there and watching a presentation where they had the top executives of all the different top carriers that write cyber up, and they were having a discussion. And one thing that they all virtually agreed on is that within the next 5 years, that cyber is going to be one of the top 3 lines of insurance. Okay? So if you're not writing cyber now, you're going to want to be writing cyber because it is going to be one of the top lines of coverage. So we'll continue to move into that direction. So let's take a look through the timeline a little bit here that we have going on. We're going to start out with 2018. I love 2018. My job was easy in 2018. All right? I mean, I was out trying to work on my golf game. I was out, I was actually working out. I had time to exercise because that's how easy it was for me. And it was easy for the carriers, too. Loss ratios were very low. To the companies, when all those, like I said, about, what was it, 189, 194, whatever, it's about 200 carriers were moving in. This is about when they all moved in, 2018. It was like printing money. Everybody was running for it. You know what? When I would do some presentations, I would collectively try to pool money from the audience, the participants, so that we can create our own cyber insurance company. Because that's what it was like, printing money. And they did, so everybody was jumping into it. Everybody was entering the game. It was so easy. I was able to sit there and get a bindable quote if you just gave me your email address, right? That's how easy it was. Oh, and premium reductions or getting any type of enhancement, so easy. All I had to do was say, please. If I got the underwriter on the phone and said, will you please do this? They'd be like, yeah, sure, let's do it. So it was easy to get the coverages. I love 2018. I want my 2018 back. 2019, we started to see a little rise, and this is where a lot of the insurance carriers started seeing some of the volatility. The loss ratios increased to 47.1%. That was almost a 13% increase. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's trying to take a look at it and say, okay, maybe this is real, and we have to start looking at our losses. The frequency was up 33%. I remember in 2019, the frequency was up. We started seeing a lot more social engineering schemes. All right, and there was a lot more frequency. You guys remember all of those business email compromises that were happening back then? So, I mean, that was moving and the frequency was up. The ransomware attacks up 131%. Severity was moving into, this is the first time in 2019 that I actually saw anything higher than a demand of $10,000. Okay? And this is, we were starting to see 7 and 8 figures. And those were for the large organizations. Does anybody know right now what the average ransom demand is for all businesses for the first quarter of 2021? Yeah, you're close. $1.2 million. Is that ridiculous or what? When it used to be 2,000, 1.9. Forensic investigators are usually successful in negotiating 30 to 50% down. Even if they get down 50%, 600,000, that's a still sizable amount that they have to sit there and pay for the ransom demand. By the end of 2020, in the first quarter of 2020, as we sit there and moved into that year, we started, the market just kept hardening. It's just getting worse because the frequency's going up, the severity's going up. Everybody's starting to take note of what's happening. They actually started doing this little thing that they call underwriting. This is when they started that whole new concept of underwriting. And they were actually starting to evaluate what their books were as well as the risks that they had. And we started to see some rate increase. Okay? 2020, frequency and severity are totally up. By the year end, the carriers are definitely feeling pain. Loss ratios increased to 73%. That is not combined, folks. That is just the straight loss ratio, 73%. So what does that tell you about insurance companies that are writing cyber? They're no longer printing money, right? Now they're sitting there starting to take some losses. The frequency and severity are up. It's not just one or the other, so it's hard to sit there and really deal with it. One of the carriers that I was talking to, their ransomware attacks are up 400% in 2020. 400%. Now, mind you, you guys are always going to hear all different statistics. My job up here is this whole thing called shock and awe. So when I find a statistic that is very high, I'm going to run with it. All right, so that's where I get the 400% from. All right, I had one carrier say 400%, so now John says it's 400%, so we're going with it. Phishing attacks were up 350%. Same thing there with phishing attacks, 350%. So not only are we getting clipped on the ransomware, but we're getting clipped on the social engineering. So these losses are all over the place. In 2021, this is where we are today, and I want my 2018 back. Cyber demand is up because of all of the ransomware, all of the phishing. There's a lot more acknowledgement of a need for cyber with a lot of businesses. Would you guys agree? Do you guys have your clients now sitting there asking you a little bit more questions about cyber because of a lot of the press they've seen, a lot of the stuff? So this is what's creating a lot of this demand. But capacity is down. Carriers that used to give us 10 million might give us 5. Well, used to give us 5 are now giving us 3. 3 is down to 1. So all of our limits, we now get into this business of we're learning to, we got to stack limits. And to sit there and try to get any sizable amounts. So everybody has dropped tremendously in what it is that they've made available. We're starting to see a lot more carriers exit classes. They'll tell you that they're not, but I don't know if I told you guys, but I'm actually a broker in professional liability. This is what I live and breathe, and I spend a great deal of time here in the cyberspace. And I can tell you, these classes of business, municipalities, healthcare, financial services, education, and technology, whenever I get one of those submissions come across my desk, I give it to somebody else on my team. Let them deal with the heartache on that one. Now, I'm going to sit there and look for the easy stuff. But those are very difficult to place these days, and especially if they have a claim. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about the cybersecurity requirements that a lot of them want to see in place, and that has a lot to do with multi-factor authentication. The biggest problem, like in industry groups like education, they work on proprietary systems, most of them. And the proprietary systems, it's not just a switch to turn on MFA. They have to sit there and reprogram or solicit a third party for actually the MFA to sit there and be put on place. You guys from CyberFin, you guys have, do you know of any way that, people who don't have a switch that they can implement MFA? Is there a software that they can purchase? Talk to me, Goose.
Yeah.
Where would they find it?
There's a lot of various ones. It depends on the application and how you define multi-factor authentication around it. If it's accessing the app or...
I'll repeat here in a minute. Wait. Here, we got a mic so that you folks can hear it. We can get it over there. I'm just going to I'm going to drill the team up here as we go on throughout the day, and we'll get some real live answers, okay?
This is not what I wanted to do this early in the morning. I was waiting for another hour or two to talk. So there are different applications and solutions out there. You have to look at the way you're talking about it, you're looking at the application itself and how you put multi-factor on around that. But you can put containers around that application, so you can have multi-factor authentication to access, to then be able to access the application, depending upon, so it's not a black and white answer, is I guess where I'm getting to. There are different features and the definition of multi-factor authentication, if you ask everybody on this side, it would probably be a different answer.
Is these techniques that you're talking about, wrapping something around, is it expensive? And how long does it take?
No.
Any idea?
It can vary. It can be very expensive, or you can get solutions that are very simple and easy.
Okay. See, and this is a good thing to know, because how many of you guys have had your clients actually get denied or non-renewed because they did not have MFA in place for a cyber account? Yeah? You run into that? What was your solution for them? Did you find one? They implemented one? Yeah, and that's the biggest challenge, is getting everybody to implement it. If you have Office 365, it's real easy to flip on, MFA, multi-factor authentication. We'll do a little bit deeper dive here in a little bit. But what I wanted to make sure that you guys understood is that part of the problem is all these carriers are sitting there and sending out these non-renewal notices and saying that they're not going to sit there and provide a quote because they don't have MFA in place. Well, heck, 3 months ago, none of the underwriters knew what MFA was. That wasn't a question. That wasn't anything that they were looking at. And now all of a sudden, 10 days before the expiration, they're requiring it. That's a challenge. And then a lot of people, it takes them time to implement it. I have never had a single insured come up to me and tell me that MFA is stupid, I don't want to do it. But if they do tell me, it's going to take some time and it's going to take some money. I'm not going to be able to make it happen overnight. But the carriers are regardless of what it is the carriers are looking at these classes, and a lot of them are moving out because that's what's driving up a lot of their losses. Carriers are concerned about systemic risk and aggregate impacts. So they don't know what's in their book of business, right? It's kind of like a box of chocolates, right? But I mean, they have no idea. So what do? More and more carriers now are starting to do what they call the continuous underwriting. And the continuous underwriting is they're constantly scanning their book of business, looking for vulnerabilities. When they find and one of the organizations has a vulnerability, they are sending them love letters that are saying, you either fix it or we're going to non-renew. Okay? Those are the challenges that we're starting to see when we're looking at monitoring the books of business. It's a good plan, but as they're monitoring the books of business, let's say Microsoft Exchange Server, when that compromise came out, that's the first thing all of these carriers did, is started scanning their books of business to find out who's using it and the people that are using it. Now, don't get me wrong, carriers are taking different stances. Some of them are sending you love letters, but some of them are trying to be proactive to tell you, hey, here's a list of your accounts that are utilizing Microsoft Exchange servers, and this is what we want them to do. We want them to sit there and push out these patches. We want to implement this, and we'll help them. And that's what they're doing. That's what a lot of the carriers are doing. And the carriers that are doing that stuff are the top 10, not the other 179. All right? So you'll see that we're getting more and more of that continuous underwriting. Adapting quickly with supplemental questionnaires. This is true. So whenever we see it, not only are they scanning, now all of their new business and the renewals, you have another supplemental application. So over the last year, now I'll send out a renewal application with 27 supplemental applications go along with it, asking about different types of vulnerabilities. I was kidding about the 27. That was my joke. See, Robin, you thought you had bad jokes. It gets worse from here, all right? So anyways, so that's what we're seeing happening. 2021, we're hard, and all the carriers were looking to take rate. And they were thinking that rate alone was going to fix it, and they now know that it is not. You cannot just count on rate to fix this problem and make it go away. The underwriting is becoming much more sophisticated and technical. Would you guys agree? This is where I say it came full circle. Early on, 2006, when you were trying to write any type of cyber, it was a matter of the applications were about this thick and technical. If you gave that application to a CEO and then also to the information officer, I used to do this just for fun, you would get two totally different answers on both of those applications, okay? They would never have the same. So because of that, all the underwriters, before they gave you terms and conditions, they would require a conference call with the chief information officer of that organization. That's how you were going to get terms. It was very technical in nature. Have you guys seen a lot more of these supplementals starting to come out asking these very intense technical questions? Cyber applications now are becoming very, like I said, technical. I actually had to take my team with I took some of these supplementals, probably about 7 of them, put them together to find the common things that they were looking for. Some of them I had no idea what they were talking about. So I took our IT department, our internal IT department, and asked them. Some of them, they didn't know what they were talking about. But then what I started to do, I actually had to have our IT department come in and train our professional liability brokers so that they can understand what some of these acronyms are and how they work. That's how technical it is really becoming. And we actually spend a considerable amount of time these days trying to make sure that we're keeping current with all of what these guys like CyberFin are doing. We're not saying that we're going to be programmers, but we've got to be able to speak the language. That's how technical it is becoming. Carriers are using more and more vendors on the front end and the back end. When I say that they're starting to partner up with vendors, that's exactly what they're doing is they want to run scans on the system, looking for vulnerabilities. They want to sit there and be able to enlist the services of different companies to be able to fix some of the vulnerabilities that they found. So we're starting to get a lot more third-party vendors involved. Days of the quick quotes are over. We know that, and those underwriters are definitely forced to do that little new thing called underwriting these days. So in 2021, the rates have increased anywhere from 15 to 50%. We have seen that. I just had a expiring policy on a community college. The expiring terms was $22,000 was the expiring premium. The renewal quote, because they had a claim over the last year, was how much? How much? 150. 150, 65, 65, 65, go here, 150 plus, 150 plus, 240. 240,000. Who here in this room thinks that they're a real good salesperson and could sell it? Okay, we got one. Yeah. Good news is we did sell it. I didn't sell it, but one of the brokers on the team sold it, but only because of the relationship, long-lasting relationship, and hopefully we'd be able to get everything mitigated and enhance it during the term of the policy. But that is a problem. And why? Here's another thing. So a lot of the carriers now, the big buzzword is that if you've had a claim in the last year, they do not want to sit there and write that risk. Why? Bingo. Chris is the winner. Hasn't been all cleaned up yet. What they're looking, have you guys heard about this little thing that's on the rise called double extortion? So double extortion, so they'll come in and they will unload ransomware on your system. They will encrypt all of your data. They will charge you a ransom. You pay the ransom. They will give you the decryptor code. They will give you all of your information back. So you're good with that guy. Now they turn around and they still have a revolving door in your system. They will sell that revolving door to one of the other 99 criminal rings that are out there to see if they want to participate in a second chance. It's called double extortion. So that's what they're looking for now is they're going in afterwards. So nobody wants to take a risk that has had a claim in the last year because they're concerned that the bad guy is still in there. God, I love my job. The other thing so next year when I was on that one webinar I was telling you about with all of the executives from the different carriers, they said next year expect another 35% rate increase. So we took 15 to 50% this year, expect another 35% next year. On top of that, what they're doing is they're reducing commissions. Some brokers may have had enhanced commissions with some of these cyber markets. Well, the cyber markets now are pulling back those enhanced commissions. So now they'll strip you 5-10% of the commissions that they were offering you before. And the reason for this is they say, you know what, you're going to make it up in the rate increase. Okay. I'm still trying to get my arms around this conversation. But in 2018, my renewals were fairly easy to process, okay? We would take a look at the risk, no change in the risk, the coverages are still good, the coverage is good, moving on down the road, renewal, keep it going. Fast forward to 2021, they want to sit there and jack me up 50%. I give my insured a 50% rate increase. What are they looking to do? shop it, right? They want to remarket, they want to know what else is out there. So now all of a sudden, my renewal teams are working overtime because what used to take them 30, 45 minutes to do is now taking them 3 to 4 hours to do. So how is that increase in commission actually making up for the additional time, pain, and energy that the teams have to do to deal with this? I don't see where it's a win-win. I'd still rather have the enhanced commission and go back to 2018. My golf game was better. I was thinner. They're reducing limits and they're increasing retentions. We've all seen that. We used to be 10,000 is now 100,000. So what the underwriters are doing is they're focusing on a couple different areas. One of them is that they're really trying to understand more of what is going on. So they're looking at doing some things with ransomware payments. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. And they're also looking to underwrite to computer security. These are the two things that we really need to focus on to get insurance as we move into the future. As we all know, here's some stats, some fun stats for you to share with your family and friends. I wanted to give you guys some of this stuff as far as how it has been exploding over the year. The first half of 2020, a carrier saw a 260% increase in ransomware frequency and a 47% increase in severity. It's just going up. 2019 to 20, we had a 311% increase in paid ransoms. 2020, the average payment increased 171, and I told you guys what the average payment is right now, 1.2. I mean, it is commonplace out there to see $5, $6, $10 million demands on ransomware. And I'm not talking, you guys think, okay, well, maybe that was for Procter & Gamble. No, this is for Pete and Gabby. You know, that small shop right down there. They're getting clipped with $5, $6 million demands that can take them out of business. All right, so let's talk a little bit here about what the carriers actually, how they want to control the sublimits and the co-insurance. So we're starting to see this movement, and the first place that I saw was AXA, and AXA is one of the top 5 cyber writers that are out there. So they're just not somebody that is dabbling in this. One way that they're trying to deal with this is trying to remove ransom payments. Not having it in the policy format anymore. And that's exactly what they did in France. All of their policy wording, they removed extortion coverage in their policy form. Shortly thereafter, they were hacked, right? They had a ransom attack. You think that was coincidence? Or do you think it was somebody trying to send a message? I don't know. Why are you guys so quiet? I haven't had a single question yet. Scaring you. Okay, my job here is done. All right, so debate over insurance coverage is fueling the ransomware business. Slow down, give him a breather. Yeah, that's right. Only 10 to 15% of businesses buy the coverage, and that's the statistic. I think it's more up towards 25%. The big thing here is it funding terrorism? This is where all of the ransomware is going. We have different federal regulators that are out there, different groups that are being put together, and they're trying to determine should they eliminate ransomware altogether. What are your thoughts? Yeah, I got somebody here saying yes, they should. Do I got a no? Of course I got a no. Are you going to have a yes and a no? Everybody's going to have different opinions. At first blush, I would agree with the yes. I would agree with, you know what, we shouldn't be paying these ransom demands. Why? Because is it funding terrorism? Yeah, it's funding terrorism. Well, it's funding criminal activity. But you know, has anybody here ever gone through a cyber attack and wouldn't mind raising their hand and telling us about it? So let me tell you about some of my experiences then. You should see the look on the face when somebody walks into their office and they see that first screen that I showed you, that little letter from the extortionist. They could, all the way up until that point when they realize that they have just worked their butts off for the last 30 years to build this business, that they've just lost it in 5 minutes. You have a tendency of changing your mind as to whether or not you should pay that or not. Okay? Everybody, for the most part, nobody ever wants to pay it. They agree that it may be if it's not funding terrorism, it's definitely funding criminal activity. There's no doubt about it. And the more that we pay it, the more it's going to continue to happen. But when you're sitting there at a fork in the road, pay the $600,000 to this bad guy, or put the closed sign on the front of the door that you've worked for 20, 30 years. What are you going to do? I'm the only one that would pay it? You know? So, I mean, that's it. And that's what I see in the situation. So, but anyways, at the federal level, I know that they have, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but the federal government was trying to put together a task force, and the whole concept was to actually eliminate the legality of paying ransom attacks. Did you hear anything about that?
There's been a lot of discussion with the Department of Justice, the FBI, NSA, all the different three-letter agencies about legislating against paying ransom to these different criminal organizations. There's a huge amount of pushback for the reasons that you talked about. Just an interesting fun fact, the vast majority of the North Korean nuclear program was funded on ransomware attacks. So you've got all of these hackers that are affiliated with the North Korean regime, billions of dollars a year in ransomware attacks across every single industry, and all that money is being funneled right into the North Korean nuclear program. And that's proved. That's, that is open source threat intelligence information of where that money is going. So, is that terrorism? It's an unfriendly regime for sure. The same things happens in Russia. I just watched a 4-day series on Chinese threat intelligence and the institutional, organizational level cyber threat mechanism that is perpetuated throughout all the different levels of the Chinese government. And it's not just against the United States. This is a global phenomenon. And to think that this is going to get better before it gets worse, I think is just a large amount of naivete. So understanding where the threat comes from, appreciating in a realistic perspective what we can and cannot do from an organizational, institutional level, i.e. government at the federal and at the state, local, municipal level. And understanding that you really have to have a very comprehensive, in-depth approach for all of these issues that John has brought up in order for us to start to be more effective in decreasing. We're never going to stop the attacks. I think to think that we can do something that's going to stop us, protect us, keep us 100% safe, again, a high level of naivete. But if we can do some things that make it more difficult and make my organization the one that they bounce off of rather than walk through, then I think that makes a lot of sense to do those types of things.
Thanks, Matt. And Matt, real quick, if I remember correctly, you have kind of a unique background, something that you did. Where were you before the Department of Commerce?
Well, the really fun one was...
It's probably the fun one that I'm after.
The fun was with the Minnesota National Guard and my cyber stuff with the military, but I was with a small cybersecurity company, veteran-owned in St. Paul, and that was fun. I didn't get to do a lot of the really interesting bits, parts, and pieces that are, in the weeds in cyber, but I'll relate a quick story based on what you said before on ransomware. So we had a client, small financial services, private financial services company in St. Paul, and their clients were primarily private colleges and universities. This a couple years ago now, but they had a ransomware attack. They ended up paying the ransom. It wasn't a ton of money. I think it was $35,000, $40,000. So in the big scheme of things, not huge, but This is a 3-person family-owned financial services shop, 3 people. They've been in the business for 65 years. Had a ransomware attack, paid the ransom, their IT department went in, scrubbed their servers. They were down for 6 weeks while IT rebuilt their servers, rebuilt their infrastructure, right? IT rebuilt their servers, rebuilt their infrastructure. 6 months later, same group, same attack. This time, $65,000. IT went in, rebuilt their servers, rebuilt their systems, right? They gave us a call because we made a cold call. Said, let us do just a quick, we'll take a look at your systems. We found 13 pieces of ransomware 5 days after they put their servers back online, because IT rebuilt their servers, not security, IT. And there's 2 distinct groups within this realm. There's IT, which are fantastic people, and they know your systems inside and out. They can build you a computer like nobody's business. But they don't know security, because security is a completely different animal. Then you have security, right? Security is not going to build a computer, but they can make sure that you can probably use it for a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. So when we start to think about this, if you say, well, I've got a managed service provider, I'm fine. If you have a managed service provider and a managed security services provider, then you're good. You're not perfect, but you're good. You're going to be a lot quicker. So in this little shop, in the course of a year and a half, they had spent close to $100,000 just in ransomware. They were out for a total of, I think, about 10 weeks. They were down over the course of about 18 months. And half their clients left because their data was compromised. So, we talked to them after they had gotten done, and they said, well, we have to make a serious decision as to whether or not we're going to stay in business. This is a shop, that has been their parents' children running a financial services organization. That's kind of a sad thing. So.
Thanks, Matt. That's a very important fact, and I appreciate you sharing that story with us, that there is a difference between your IT provider and the security firm. So why don't we take our first 10-minute break, and everybody just kind of think about that for a little bit. I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit because we've got about another hour left in this presentation, and then for the third hour, we start doing some Q&A up here. But I want to get into the new Minnesota law a little bit quicker than that. So, where we're at now is we talked a little bit about it, and I think we debated it enough to try to figure out whether or not you should pay it or you shouldn't. The FBI is virtually saying no, that you shouldn't. And then there's also OFAC, Office of Foreign Assets Control. In October, they started making sure that they reminding all of the insurance carriers that if they were to make a payment on an extortion payment to an organization that was currently on the specially designated nationals and black persons list, if they made a payment to them, that they would be sanctioned. So what happens now is when a carrier has to pay an extortion payment, they first and foremost have to check it against that list to find out whether or not this criminal group is on that list. If the criminal group is on that list, they are not allowed to make that payment. Okay? Let's talk now about some of the cybersecurity that a lot of the carriers are underwriting to. And this is important. I get a lot of people asking me questions, bless you, a lot of people asking me questions about what can they do, what are the carriers doing. What the carriers are doing makes a lot of sense because you don't want to have a cyber incident. The first one that we're going to look at here is MFA, Multi-Factor Authentication. Multi-factor authentication is said to be able to mitigate 99% of the fraudulent activity that happens on your site. Would you guys agree with that? I have cyber experts up here nodding their head yes, 99%. Let me explain to you what multi-factor authentication is. We all know how we get into our email addresses, right, with our username and password. That is something that we know. That's what we've been using for years, usernames and passwords. Multi-factor authentication just takes an extra step. It takes something that you know and it adds something that you have. So what happened is when you go on to, let's say, Office 365, you'll go to log in, it will send a text message to your cell phone, something that you have, with a 6-digit code that you now have to enter into the system. So you use your username and password, and then you have to use the code that is sent to your phone. Very easy to do. If you have Office 365 environment, which a lot of people work in, it's just a click of a switch. Why they don't push all of this stuff out with having it engaged instead of having, it toggled off, I don't know. But it's a very simple fix, and that's 99%. So what is the one thing that you can do to eliminate 99% of your exposure? MFA, MFA, MFA. Okay, we're going to do a little chant a little bit later. But that's it, guys. And the underwriters are looking for it in 3 different areas: for remote, email, and privileged accounts. Privileged accounts are generally administrative accounts. Email is your Office 365. Many people don't even use remote access, but on applications, they will constantly list on there that they do not have MFA for remote access. Why? Because they don't even have remote access. But they don't tell that to the underwriter. They don't tell that to their broker. So that's one thing that you always want to ask, because if we send it in, they say no MFA for remote, 99% of the carriers are going to say, sorry, we're not going to give you coverage. I probably represent 60-plus cyber markets. I have maybe 4 that will entertain a risk without MFA. Okay? So there are a couple out there, but it's very limited in scope. So that's why there is a big push for MFA. Patch management. We don't need no stinking patches. Patch management is huge. Ask Equifax. Equifax, what was that, 150 million affected individuals, all because they did not download their patch. And what are the patches? Patches are fixes. Computer security, software companies realize all day and every day that they have a vulnerability. They might have been exploited. So what they will do is they will send you out patches to fix. So you ever sitting behind your computer screen and it has this little pop-up that comes up over there in the corner and it says, "Hi, we have an update. Would you like for us to shut you down for the next 20 minutes and totally disrupt your productivity, or would you like us to remind you later?" Where do you guys click? Remind later, right? That's patches. Okay. Matt said, no problem. He works for the state. He sees it, he clicks on do it now, and then he goes and grabs coffee. So, but that's it. And now, you can work with your IT professionals because they can push that stuff out during the evening. There's times that they can do it, but it's important that you have a consistent system that you are actually pushing out those patches. That blocks all of the known vulnerabilities. I do not remember the actual statistics because I have slept since then, but I read a report one time that it was roughly over 90% of the breaches that happened because somebody exploited a known vulnerability that the patch has been out for 6 months or more. IT guys, would you guys agree with that? Okay? And that's all because they're not pushing out their patches. So that's the next thing that the underwriters are looking for. And it's not just things that underwriters are looking for, guys. If you want to protect yourselves, these are wonderful tools to sit there and implement and put in place. And we got people that can help you do it. Email filters. Email filtering, because a lot of employees just grab their emails, answer, reply, open attachments. Why? Because that's what they're used to. They just want to work fast. They want to please. Email filtering is a way that they'll actually sit there and take it, and they'll screen it, looking for bad IP addresses, looking for fake emails. Some of them will actually open up executables in a sandbox so that you don't take down your system. But email filtering is something everybody is looking for, and it's a great component. And folks, all of this stuff that we're talking about here is not going to break the bank. Okay? It's not going to take you out of business. Many of them are very reasonable, and they're service providers, which we'll find out later on here today what Sinfin can actually do for you when it comes to this. Disable macros. Disabling macros is just a flip of a switch, usually in your system. So that way, because most people, they have no need for macros, and macros, what that will do is that will open up an executable. When you open up an attachment, it usually sits there and says, okay, now you go take this step, and this step. You don't need that in your system. Okay, most people don't. So all you have to do is disable macros. Endpoint detection, everybody has endpoints. Your computers, your laptops, your cell phones, these are all endpoints. And what everybody's looking for now, the underwriters, is some form of detection software to identify how the information is moving through your system. Some of them are looking for large amounts of data being dumped out of your system, being downloaded, right? Well, is that going to trigger a red flag? Yeah, it's going to trigger a red flag. Some of them are AI, artificial intelligence. So what they do is they really study how it is you work, what you do, how you do it, and then when they see something outside the norm, they throw up a red flag. These are great tools to be able to utilize because right now the first step that a bad guy takes is getting into your system. They will do reconnaissance work throughout your system, move laterally throughout your computer system for 30, 60 days before they unload ransomware. And that's what the endpoint detection will tell you, is whether or not the bad guy's sniffing around in your system and what he's doing. So it's a great piece to have. Backups, offline and off-site. Everybody has backups, right? We all have backups. But what the problem is a lot of people keep their backups tied to their internet connection. Doesn't help a lot. So what you want to be able to do is have some form of an air gap between your backup and your actual system. Matt was talking a little bit about the guy who kept getting encrypted, on and on and on again. Probably didn't have a backup. An infected backup. So that's what actually happened is they infected the backup. So every time that they would reinstall, they were reinstalling the affected. And they had an infected backup because most likely it was connected to their server and online. Right? These are some very easy components. Now let me go through this real quick. These are things that you can do. And you guys jump in and just sit there and tell me whether or not you guys have stuff like this available to help agents. And I'm also going to tell you whether or not the cyber program, the insurance policy, has things available. So MFA, do you guys have tools available to help people with multi-factor authentication? We've got a yes. They can help you with multi-factor authentication. For all the remote email and privileged accounts? Simple. Helps us get that. Patch management. How about patch management? Oops, sorry. Patch management? They got services that help you with patch management. Now, just so that you guys know, this is actually the first time I'm sitting down with them, so they can say no at any given time, okay? This is not pre-rehearsed. I just want to see what they can do and what they can't. Email filtering. Yes, they can help you with email filtering. Disable macros? They can help you with disabling macros. Endpoint detection? They can help you with endpoint detection. Backups offline and off-site? They can help you with your backups. So that's what the State of Minnesota Association here is trying to do, is put together a holistic program for all of you guys, for your agencies, as well as information that you could share with your clients. So many of these things here can be done by some of the third-party providers that we have. Now, the cyber program that we have is going to provide you with information on how to do all of this your own. They're going to give you written documentations, okay? It's something that they call in their BBR portal. Anybody ever gone on that? One? Yeah, that's about usually how many I find. Did you find it useful at all? Yes, it is useful. If you have the Beasley breach response policy through the state association, there is a front-end risk management web portal that's built in. You get it when you get your policy, you get access to it. This program is very robust. It provides you with a lot of boilerplates, a lot of policies and procedures, and a lot of information articles to help you identify how to do a lot of this stuff. I have written thousands of policies for agents. I think maybe 2% of them have ever gone on that site, okay? I know I laugh about it, but really I cry at night. So you do want to sit there and pay attention to it. Cyber extortion. We mentioned earlier on about what the program looked like, cyber extortion in the beginning days. It was very easy, very simplistic. Nowadays, it is very much robust. These are sophisticated criminal rings that you guys are dealing with here today. It's no longer that 40-year-old sitting down in the basement. The first thing they got to do is they have to find a way to get into your system. This is how they generally get into your system. Social engineering schemes. Those are generally going to be phishing emails. They are looking for ways to give your credentials. They will send you fake emails, ask for your credentials, so now they have user name and password. That's why the MFA, you'll see down there, simple ways to prevent it, to keep them from getting it. So multi-factor authentication, email filters, prohibits it from ever getting to your desk, and disabling macros so that if it does have an executable attached to the file, it won't engage, okay? You guys, anything we want to add? Am I on point? Here we go, we got a mic. Would you mind standing up? I had, this thing is being videotaped. Hi, everybody wave to the video camera. So would you mind standing up and facing the video camera then?
Thank you. So to tag into that a little bit, how when you said they're sophisticated people, it doesn't have to be that sophisticated. You know, I'm Michael. I run a small heating and cooling company. So I'm looking for insurance. So I'm going to send everyone here, because I can pull your mailing list, a PDF of all of my documentation. Or hey, it's on a Dropbox link. Here's a Dropbox link to my company information. I've pre-filled out the forms. Here, click it. You get the link, you click on it. Oh, it's an Office 365. I better log in. Now I just have your Office 365 credentials. Now I can then go in and log in as you in your Office 365 and then spam all of your clients. I have access to your email accounts. And so it can be sophisticated, but it can also be very simple as I'm a new client, I'm looking for insurance. So,
Thank you. Okay, so that's on the social engineering. The other way that they do it is they take advantage of known vulnerabilities. And this is where we see a lot of the carriers running the scans, looking for these known vulnerabilities. One of the big ones that has happened here over the pandemic is RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol. When everybody started working from home, they would be accessing their computers at work. And this actually, the way that they would get to their computers to work is they'd go through a remote desktop protocol. And it was very easy. It's actually a port 3389 that's usually outside facing. And it was a way for the threat actors to very easily get inside the system and access the credentials, the username and stuff. One way to sit there and to prevent that is the patch management and the endpoint detection. The endpoint detection, folks, is huge. Well, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's huge because that monitors your system. Some of them are very robust, and it's really looking for that fraudulent activity happening behind the walls, the stuff that you never see. These guys get sophisticated where they're moving at the exact same time you are, and they're moving laterally along with you. Okay? All right, once in there, they begin their reconnaissance. They search all your files. They literally do a search in your computer system, and they will search for things like profit loss statements. They will search for things like private or privileged information, anything, files that are listed that way. They will search for anything that is going to tell them how much money you have and how much you're able to pay for a ransom. They will also then monitor and search your system to find out whether or not you're cyclical. Because if you do 70% of your revenues in the fourth quarter of the year, are they going to want to extort you in the second quarter? No. They'll stand back and put you on a wait list. They'll get you the fourth quarter because then they know that the ransom is going to be a lot more valuable. And do they also do a search for cyber insurance? Oh, yeah, they do. They're looking for your deck page on your cyber insurance policy to find out what your limits are. I was working with one situation. And the forensic investigators were negotiating with the threat actors at this time, trying to determine the ransom payments. And the threat actors came up with a number. I don't remember the exact number, but our guy went back, our forensic investigator went back and said, sorry, we don't have that kind of revenue. There's no way that we can sit there and afford to pay that type of a demand. The threat actors said nothing, sent them a copy of their deck page of their cyber policy. Okay? So yes, they're looking for it. Leave a secret door open. Okay, so they're searching. When I say leave a secret door open, because they're in your system. One of the first things, everybody thinks that when a bad guy gets in there and gets access to your system, that they just unload the ransomware. They don't. One of the first things that they do is they're going to put a revolving door in. They're going to unload some sort of software that is going to give them access to and from to go as they're free to sit there and get in your system and out of your system undetected. Okay? That's one of the first things that they do, and I just refer to it as revolving door because it's easier than getting into the tech side of the things. And then they download your data. They will pack and zip pretty much all of your data, or a large portion of it, and put it in a small little packet, and then they will sit there and upload it or uploaded through that little revolving door, where you never even see it going unless you have a robust endpoint detection system. That's where you see the large amounts of information leaving your computer system and throws up a red flag. But usually it's undetected. And after they do this, there's another software system that they have in there that is walking behind them and cleaning the floor. They are sitting there and wiping away all of their tracks. So when they do finally unload the malicious software, the ransomware, forensics has a very difficult time identifying where they went because they have erased their tracks as they've been moving through your system. So that is pretty much a complex organization. Take it one step further, I want you to understand that this is not just one guy, okay? One person is going to write the code for the ransomware. He is going to partner up with people who might be able to do the phishing schemes to get the credentials. And the one guy is going to have to pay him something because the guy who wrote the code is what's called ransom as a service. They write the script. These other guys find ways of sitting there and downing it into their system, and they split 60-40. 25, 75. Any of you guys just read the article about the Conti guy that got aggravated at this group because they only paid him $1,500 to handle the extortion when he was supposed to have received 25% of the ransom demand? So he got mad and he actually published the IP addresses of their web server that they were using. Okay, so here now we have bad guys going against bad guys. So now this stuff's getting real. Okay, all right. So anyways, so that's what they're doing. And first of all, everybody says, well, we'll just install the backups. We just heard a story about how the backups are infected. The backups are also encrypted. Backups are encrypted before they even sit there and encrypt your main servers that you're operating on. And then they launch the attack, and they could be in your system for months. A couple other things here. I was just talking about ransom as a service, and then you have the other guys. Now, as you're negotiating with these threat actors throughout the day, you're negotiating really with call centers. These guys are call centers. They have a list of what they're allowed to do, what they're allowed to say, and if you get to a certain point, they will sit there and say, I'm sorry, I do not have the authorization to negotiate that. I will have to check with my supervisor. Kid you not. Okay, I can't make this stuff up. Then, after you sit there and you send the money to the Bitcoin wallet that they tell you to do it, that money then is laundered. It ships out to like 100 different mules. So it's just split up and it starts working its way throughout the entire U.S. So that's why the federal government has a tough time tracking it down. So kind of a sophisticated criminal ring. I kind of look at it that I have job security for the next couple of years because I don't look for this to change or to die down anytime in the near future. Guys, anything that I said am I off base with? Anything you want to add on to it?
So one of the things, and I'll talk a little bit about my past here when I come up, but one of the big things I think that I'm seeing as we talk to different agencies out here, because their MSPs are, I think, talking to them like they've got data that they're protected.
And MSP is what?
Managed service provider, so that'll be like your tech person coming in and fixing your computers and helping out. And one of the things I think that as we got into the space and started to look at is understanding the data going in and out of those computers. I mean, really detecting it. And I think one of the big things that John just mentioned is that it's 30 to 60 days that they're in the system. And there's a lot of red flags that can come up. And so, you know, one of the things we're going to talk about our stuff and what we can put on the systems can detect that. And I don't know, Michael, if you want to add anything else before we get into it. I mean, we're going to talk about it a little bit, but since he just mentioned it, I think that's one thing is that we're seeing a lot of pushback out there from the tech individuals like, oh no, you're protected. You're totally fine. And I think we can do a lot of protection up front, so,
Yep.
Sorry.
Okay, no, all good. Thanks. Okay, so I showed you guys one earlier today with the extortion, what a recent extortion text file looks like. This is kind of old school. This is like when it first started becoming cool, but I still like sharing this one because this is another variation of the screen that you'll walk into. And some of the things that I just thought was so neat when they started moving, this was when they started moving into version, I actually think that this was 2.0. So this is after 1.0, and this is one of the ransomware as a services. Oh, by the way, you can subscribe to ransomware as a service for about $470. Okay, anybody's interesting. And I only get 10% referral fee. So anyways, they tell you a little bit about what happened, how you can recover it, how do you pay. And it's a beautiful thing, and you see this, when I say early on, they were only looking for $600 a piece. Now it's a big difference. But the important part to remember is that there's a time clock. All of these guys have a time clock. Once you start dealing with them, and once you're encrypted, that clock starts to tick. They're only going to give you a certain period of time to pay. Otherwise, they're going to double it within a certain time, usually like 3 days. You don't pay, don't acknowledge, they're going to double the ransomware, the extortion payment. And then if you don't, they sit there and they just say, forget about it. You're not going to get your information back. Okay? Ask the city of Atlanta. And then they give you the Bitcoin. But the beautiful thing that I really like about it is contact us. The friendly service that they have, and these people are wonderful to chat with. They're so pleasant. I don't know where they find employees like that, but it's great stuff that's very educational and a very friendly customer service to work with. All right, so it's very costly. We talked a little bit about that. The downtime we were mentioning is 51 days when your system is down. That's the average downtime. Everybody forgets about the business interruption component that's associated with this. The cyber breach itself is just the tip of the iceberg. The ransom demand, the tip of the iceberg. I had a guy call me up and he said, all right, so I got a ransom demand, and this was a couple of years back. He said they want $2,500. He said, I just want to pay the $2,500. I encouraged him not to pay the $2,500, but to engage the policy and to get the breach coach in to help. I said, the $2,500 is just the tip of the iceberg, okay? He called me back up probably about 3 months, and he said, I just want to sit there and go back over you, and he said, you were exactly right. It was just the tip of the iceberg. I paid the $2,500. I didn't engage the cyber company. It cost me over $65,000 by the time I was done. The business loss you have to deal with. Imagine if you're shut down for 1 day. How much is that going to cost you in loss of income? You still have to pay all your employees, still have to pay your rents, still have to pay all your obligations. They don't go on pause, so you still have that. Many times, once you get the decryptor tool back after you pay the ransom, your system's not going to be up and running, right? There's still going to be a ton of hours afterwards to get all of that information operable again, to get it working the way that it was before the attack. You get, I would say, in my experience, you might get 95% of your information back up and running. You might have 5% of the files that are still encrypted and the decryptor tool is not working on them. Would you guys agree? Yes? Fairly, yep. So that's what I usually see. So don't expect to get all of your files back. You're going to get a majority of them, and depending on which ones are back. So then you're also going to have some laptops that are down or servers that are down that you just can't rebuild, no matter what. So now you have to rebuy those, and then you have to start from scratch. And there'll be certain softwares that are not going to work no matter what because the firmware was destroyed during the encryption process. So just know there is so much more than just a ransom payment. We talked about the double extortion. That's the piece that I wanted to discuss here, but we've already gone through that. So now let's move down into the second side of this. We're done talking about the ransom payment. I'm quickly going to talk about social engineering. And this is the one that I was mentioned earlier, funds transfer fraud and business email compromise are the number 1 and number 2 forms of social engineering. And the only difference is that underneath funds transfer fraud right here, the bad guy actually goes in, hacks into your computer, and transfers it. Business email compromise, it's usually an employee that transfers the funds because of a fraudulent type of instruction. Now, the reason that I'm pointing this out is everybody is always focused on, under social engineering, getting fraudulent instruction from a vendor or a client or an employee, and then somebody within the organization transferring their monies to a bad location, to a fraudulent bank account, right? We are seeing more and more of this being expanded. We are now concerned about not just the client's monies and securities, because that's usually what's covered, but we're concerned about their clients and their vendors' monies and securities as well. The bad guy gets into your computer system, sends all of your clients a notice, and they will send that notice and they will say, we have a new banking relationship. Here's our new bank account. Please send all of your receivables to this bank account as opposed to the other one. 20 days will go by before your client realizes that all of his accounts receivables have been going to a fraudulent or a bank account number. So how is your client going to get his money back? Sue his clients? Can't be suing all your clients, right? That's where like these different types of reverse social engineering policies come into play. You want to make sure that your social engineering, the business email compromise, and the funds transferred is actually much more robust. I thought I had it listed up here, but I don't. You want to make sure that you're not only going to cover your insured's monies and securities, but also your insured's monies, securities, and other properties. Okay? Freight, docks are being shipped off of warehouses. Inventories are being rolled out of warehouses to fraudulent locations because the bad guy, while he's in your system, is messing with the delivery instructions. So we need monies, securities, and other property, and you also need the cover for the clients and vendors, all of theirs, because they're given fraudulent instruction. 88% of businesses experienced this in 2019, and then it blew up in 2020. We had that little thing called the pandemic. I know it's tough for all of you guys to sit there and remember that. But when it did happen, the amount of phishing tactics just exploded. The biggest one that I saw is that people would call or email, because they knew everybody had just moved to working from home. They would call or email the employees, go through employee lists, knew that they were working at home, tell them that they were a third party that was enlisted by their IT department to help them make sure that they were up and running in their system. So they needed to gain remote access to it. Everybody was saying okay, gave them their credentials, they got into their systems. Right? On top of that, you had other things, you know, I mean, they were preying on the different CDC and the workforce development pieces that were going on. They were saying that they were the CDC. They were saying that they were with the workforce development. They wanted to make sure that, and to get their unemployment information, and they were collecting their unemployment checks. So we had a tremendous amount, and the big thing there is that that average jumped up to $352,000. It's not a small number anymore, right? I mean, these numbers that we're talking about can really devastate an organization, can it not? Okay, so started out with e-crime, fraudulent instruction. We discussed that a little bit. We discussed about the social engineering, and this is where I had it, the invoice manipulation. I had just discussed it, and here's the slide that we're talking about. Okay, now we're going to start. We thoroughly understand what has happened with ransomware and social engineering. We're going to start moving into some of the different regulatory changes that are happening out here. Because of the ransomware, because of the social engineering, because of the increase in all of that type of volatility, that is forcing a lot of changes in the different laws. First one we're going to talk about here is the state notification laws. There are 50 different state notification laws. Did I say different? I said different? Okay. Did I say different? There's 50 different notifications. Okay, I just want to make sure everybody understands there are different notification laws. No two of them are the same. That's part of the problem. And now, if you think you understand them, don't worry, they're changing them. They're starting to amend them and make them broader and add different pieces. 13 states in 2019 modified their notification laws. 2020, of course, it was down, right, because there wasn't a lot of activity happening, but we're expecting the explosion to happen again here in 21. Information privacy is expanding in the growing complexity. That's where we see the issues, is with the growing complexity. Everybody is trying to figure out how do we protect all of this information. So many of them are expanding their definition of private identifiable information. It used to be just private information. When I first started doing this, I would actually give you a list. I would say, you look for the first initial, first name, last name, and then find one of these identifiers. Driver's license number, date of birth, social security number, and protect it. That's easy. Recently, I've seen a shift from what they used to call private information to private identifiable information. So what's happening is if the bad guy can take that information and use it to steal your identity, many states have expanded their definition to incorporate those types of tasks. Meaning, for example, I'll just show you how far-fetched it is. Email addresses. Are email addresses private information? No. I give you my business card, you got my email address, right? You go on my website, you got the email addresses. But some states are saying that they have to be protected. And the reason is there, let's say, DocuSign. I'm not going to pick on them, but I'm just going to sit there and I'm using something that a lot of us know. DocuSign had a breach a couple years back. When they had a breach, what information was compromised? Email addresses, right? So if I know you are a DocuSign user and I have your email address, could I not send you an email that looks, smelt, and tasted like it was coming from DocuSign and ask you to sit there and update your credentials? How many people would sit there and say, okay, because this is something that I do on a daily basis? So therefore, some of the states that would consider that email during that breach as identifiable information because they could use it to compromise and to actually steal your credentials. So that's how broad some of the state notifications are going. And a lot more of them are starting to add biometric pieces of information. As more and more businesses are using thumbprints, fingerprints, eye scans. I was just in the airport. I was TSA pre-check coming out of Midway, on my way out of Midway in Chicago. The TSA pre-check line, I kid you not, was longer than the regular line. But there was this line right next to it called Clear. And Clear had nobody in it. So, of course, I've got to do a little research to find out what Clear is. Clear is just basically like a TSA pre-check, but they use your biometric information as the way to scan you in. So you go in, and I think they might use like a retina scan or something like that, and they get you in, and you just bypass all of that line. Now, the only thing that kept me doing it is $179 a year, but anyways. Increased timelines. It used to be without unreasonable delay. Many states are shifting it now to 30, 45 days, some of them 5, 10 days. We're looking at the specific notification content. Many states are coming out and saying, this is what your headline has to look like on your notification law. This is the type of font that you have to use, the size of the font that you have to use, and the paragraphs have to be in this, and this order. Oh, this is one that I want to point out. So not many states really require credit reporting, credit monitoring, okay? Massachusetts does, and they have for a while, but they have just recently changed it from 12 months to 18 months. So for those of you that have cyber insurance coverage, how many months do they usually provide credit monitoring for? Yeah, that's a good guess. 12 is a good guess. Vast majority of them are 12 months. So that's just something to notice because more states are starting to go outside of 12 months. They're starting to look at 18 and 24 months as far as credit monitoring after a breach has happened. We talk about a little bit of change that's happening because of all the explosions that's out there. In 2021, at least 42 states introduced more than 300 bills that deal with cybersecurity. Okay, Minnesota, we were just one. Are there any more that you know of? Any other bills that are dealing with cybersecurity here in Minnesota? Yeah, in the state? Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, no other ones that they're aware of. So you guys just have the one of the 300. Okay, so there's 299 other ones out there. Does that mean that you guys are going to have to deal with them? Yeah, probably. If you guys have clients in other states, this doesn't just hold it right here in just Minnesota only. You have to watch what's happening in the other states, and then we'll continue to expand. I think, Robin, this will keep you busy here for a while, won't it? I mean, as it sits there and continues. It happens in one state, doesn't it usually crawl over our way?
Yeah, there's definitely legislative creep.
Yeah, okay. What I usually find, and Robin's talking about legislative creep, I usually find that the good country of California will create something, and then you'll have New York over here create something, and then the next thing you know is the Midwest over here in the upper Midwest just sort of gets sucked in to what it is that everybody else is creating. Legislative creep, right? Okay. All right, so good news is stay current because next year we might have a new updated version of this program. Okay, so now this brings us into Nist. Nist is actually the National Institute of Standards and Technology. This, to me, as far as I'm concerned, is like the granddaddy of all the cybersecurity stuff that we see. This was created in 2014. President Obama at the time actually put out an executive order. And what he did is he asked Nist to go out and develop a cybersecurity framework. He said, go out and visit with, 20, 50 of your closest friends, businesses, find out what it is that they are doing in the industry to protect the information, what is good cybersecurity protocol, and let's put together kind of more or less the best practices. Okay? Now, don't quote me on all of this. This is kind of like my version of it, and it's easiest for me to explain this way. But that's what they did. So then this Nist cybersecurity framework has been the foundation of what we see a lot of these other laws being developed out of, a lot of the different state laws. Nist was not a law. It was just a guidance. It was kind of like the best practices. But it more or less became a staple. And it was all created, and the United States can assess and improve their ability to prevent, detect, and respond. That's what the whole thing was created for. And the Minnesota cybersecurity law that we're looking at right now, what's the whole concept of that one?
So the law is actually based on the Nist cybersecurity framework. And the framework, as John said, creates a continuity piece for the way that all
Matt, would you mind
business.
standing up,
Oh,
please?
that's
Thank
right.
you.
Forgot about that camera thing. The Nist framework creates this continuity tool so that across all industries and all levels of organization, you have common practices that are being implemented. So that when we talk about multi-factor authentication, it means the same thing for an independent insurance agency as it does for the United States Department of Defense. So it's common definitions, it's common practices, it's common templates to consider for different types of actions, common responses, and more so than anything else, it creates a network of response professionals, threat intelligence analyst professionals that all share information across the variety of different communities.
Okay, thanks. See, so as you can see, that's where the development all started. And it was originally the volunteer standard, and like what Matt just indicated, is that from there, a lot of different industry groups and states have been using it. The Minnesota law here was modeled off of also the NAIC model law, which was originally created, again, off of the Nist protocol. One thing I wanted to point out here is that 25 states currently have a data security practices, which state that the organizations within these states have to have minimum computer security standards. What exactly is that? Well, generally, many times I think that will be established by a group of your closest 12 friends that might be sitting in a courtroom with you. But the point is that it's very vague, and it's hard to nest in 25 states. What we have here in Minnesota, and I believe we're up to about 13 or 15 states now that have adapted this NAIC model law or a variation of. Is that what it is? Is it like 13 now? 13, 15? Robin, do you know? Yeah, okay. We got a definite maybe. So we're somewhere in there, around 13, 15. But that's where it's at, but it's growing. And as it continues to grow, one of the changes is that it really adds a lot more enforcement, a lot more clarity to what are minimum computer security standards. This here is a map from 2018. I have not been able to find an updated one, and I've been looking since 2018. But what I wanted to help you understand is that these data security laws that we're talking about, it varies from state to state. Some of the states it only applies to the government. Some of them it only applies to business, private enterprise, and some of them it applies to both. So you guys want to talk about a complex environment. I mean, this is, to me, I don't know about you guys, it keeps me up at night. Industry groups are starting to develop it, which brings us to where we are today. We have seen over the years, like the PCI DSS, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards, which is for people who process credit card transactions, the healthcare with HIPAA High Tech, and then, of course, the insurance with the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. The first law, back in 2016, 2017, I don't remember exactly where it was, but the NAIC put together a group, and the group started developing the model law. New York thought, and again, I'm ad-libbing, so just bear with me here. But New York basically said, you know what, NAIC is taking you too long. We're going to take what it is that you've developed, enhance it a little bit, and we're going to be the first ones to do it. And they were. In 2017, March of 2017, they actually implemented their New York standards. And it was actually with the New York Department of Financial Services, and it was very robust in nature. And this was a variation of the NAIC model law, but the first one that went into play. Many of you are probably familiar with this, right? Any of you received those little letters from your insurance companies that you represent stating, hey, you know what, we're sending you this third-party supplement to make sure that you are protecting all of the private information? Nobody received that? Yeah? Okay, a couple of you guys did. That's where this all stemmed from. Since many of those insurance carriers were licensed in the state of New York, part of their procedures there was to make sure that their third-party system, meaning you agents that have access to their system, maintain similar computer security requirements as they did, and that you're protecting it. And that's what you were agreeing to. That's why they changed your contracts. That's why they added that amendment. Okay? Now, not only do you have to do it to be in compliance with the New York Department of Financial Services, we have it here as well. Okay? I am going to get off of the New York Department of Financial Services, and what that really does is we're going to skip over now. You guys don't have these pages. This was actually something that I added on last night and early morning that I thought was going to be very helpful to everybody. So later on, if you want to get these copies, just drop an email to anybody at the association. We'll be more than happy to sit there and send you over a copy. But this is the piece that where I want to sit there and work a little bit with Matt so that we can kind of brainstorm in this area and talk about what's happening here in the state of Minnesota, talk a little bit about the new law and what it is that you have to do with compliance. Okay, good with that? If you can mic up and join me up here, we'll start, and then we'll take a break. We'll get them on the edge of their seats, and then we'll take a break.
Cool. All right, how's that? And I have my book of the, so I'm old school, I still write everything down in case I am cyber compromised. That way I still have my notes.
Okay, so if we can start out, what I'm going to probably do, Matt, is as we go through it, I've got some slides here. We're going to talk about some of the timelines. I actually have a lot of different excerpts from the actual law now. When we first created this program, the law wasn't in place yet, so that's why we kind of like added this piece here at the end. Well, Matt, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the when it starts, as well as the different compliance, when the different pieces. You know, you and I, we had a discussion a little bit earlier about when certain parts are going to go into effect.
Okay, sure. The law in and of itself went into effect on August 1st of this year. The only portion of the law that is now mandated is the reporting requirement. So if a licensed entity has a breach and they're not exempted from the law, and we'll get into all of that a little bit later, there is a requirement to report to the department. So with most things, we don't do all the stuff to support the law until the law actually gets signed by the governor. So you can see that there's kind of a lag a little bit in the system. We're in the process right now of building that reporting, that digital electronic reporting tool through our portal. So that's underway. So God forbid a licensed entity has a breach within the next 15 to 30 days, we'll have to do everything manually. So we'll collect all the information and make sure that happens. The information security program requirement that is listed in the law, which is 60A9851 through 7, I think.
There will be a test on that later, by the way.
Have I been in this enough? That component becomes effective on August 1st of 2022 with a delivered to the department no later than date of 15 April 2023. So is it confusing enough for everybody? So licensed entities that are required to report an information security program and to the department have until the 1st of next year, or the 1st of August of next year, to complete that process. And then they have from August 1st to April 15th of the next year to submit that document to the department for certification. So, so there's a lot of flexibility that still exists in the timeline here. It's not like we're expecting licensed entities to have the problem solved before they're aware that there is a problem. So there's that flexibility period in there. And we're in the department, between myself and the enforcement division and the insurance division, we're working on the assignment of responsibilities under the entirety of the new statute. So I will tell you right now, clarity in government, if you will, that we don't have all the answers as of today because we still don't understand where all the problems are going to be. And that's where that dialogue with everybody in this room and then the expanded audience becomes incredibly important to us. I know that if you haven't met Commissioner Arnold yet, you will meet Commissioner Arnold at some point, probably in a not too distant future. You'll understand that to her, like Commissioner Kelly before, the collaboration that we have as a team, if you will, is incredibly important. And that's important to me. Hopefully, the last couple of times that we have met, I have made that very, very clear, that input and feedback help us to make better decisions, right? We see things from this perspective, and unless we have your input, we can't expand that scope, so we need to see that. So as you go through and you contemplate some of the things that John has talked about and some of the things that we will continue to talk about, make sure that you understand that our doors are open, and we want to have questions. We want to talk through some of the difficult issues and some of the difficult decisions, business decisions that you have to make in order for us to get to the right place. So we have something that is implementable, that provides the type of protections that the legislature intended and us as consumers and citizens expect, and you as businesses can live with.
Great, and I appreciate that. And one thing that I want to point out is that as we go through this, there is an exemption for agencies that have less than 25 employees. Okay, do they have to comply with any of the components of the law?
Do they have to comply? I think the best way to put it is that as a regulator, I don't really have jurisdictional authority to enforce exempted pieces of the law, right? So if you are an exempted entity and under the law you do not have to file an information security program with the department, understand that it's probably me that can't do anything to you, but that doesn't mean that somebody else can't, all right? In the law, there's also a requirement of a licensed entity to provide oversight and responsibility for their third-party relationships. So, and I'll use an analogy that happened in the Department of Defense a number of years ago when a lot of this stuff went into effect. You've heard of General Dynamics, right? They're one of the largest defense contractors in the world. They build tanks, they build airplanes, they build computer systems, you name it, they build it, right? Well, they don't do everything, just like any construction company doesn't. They have subcontractors that do a whole lot of stuff. Well, General Dynamics was working on a large project for the U.S. Department of Defense. It was a piece of equipment that shot things a long way, right? Well, they did not build one of the systems that enabled this weapon system to fire things in a long way. It was about a third-party vendor. Well, the third-party vendor was using chips from China. Guess what was found in the chips from China? Malicious code that gave China a backdoor into the new weapon system that the United States was producing. General Dynamics has all kinds of things in place. Unfortunately, the third-party vendor that they used to supply a component of a system on a large weapon system that the United States needs for national defense was compromised by using Chinese chips, and they didn't have the protocols in place in order to catch it. The United States government, doing their oversight on General Dynamics systems, found the compromise. Guess who got fined? General Dynamics. The third-party vendor didn't get fined, General Dynamics did. But guess what happened to the third-party vendor? They're no more. They don't exist because General Dynamics basically destroyed their business model, because when you screw over a giant federal contractor, guess what? So the thing to keep in mind is, what are the relationships that you will have as a third party that might be responsible? You know, you might not be physically responsible or legally responsible for a process, but you might have a responsibility as being a vendor and or a business relationship with somebody that is.
Thanks. So what we're going to do is we're going to start going through some of the different law here that we have. And one thing that I want everybody to understand, though, is just because there is the exemption for 25, there are some components that you still have to comply with, but just because there's the exemption for less than 25 employees doesn't mean that you shouldn't participate in what they have going on, because this is really, it's a very good law that's going to help protect a lot of the organizations that are out there. And not only that, some other states, this is our model law, our interpretation of the model law. There's other states out there that are actually going to implement this based off of 10. So if you're working with another state, and their exemption may be down to 10 and not 25, right? So there's lots of variations, so it's important that you understand it, and there's going to be continuous regulation pushed out in all different forms. So why don't we take a quick, our last 10-minute break. You guys digest this a little bit. We'll come back in 10 minutes, and then we'll finish up with some of this. All right, Matt, so let's keep on here, and we're going to move down into the law and start talking more about it. As far as how I look at it, and as you guys had indicated before, Matt, you know, he kind of like set the stage for it. This is all relatively new to the department. It's new to us. So a lot of the things that I'm trying to do here, I mean, I'm grateful for having the opportunity to be up here, because I get to ask Matt to try to get their ideas on what it is they're looking for so that I can share it with a lot of my agent friends. So that's what I've gone down through, and I'm trying to make sure that I have a thorough understanding of what this law is, and Matt can help direct me in it and tell me where I'm all wet. So generally how I look at it is that everybody who is licensed here in the state, the agents and the insurers, have to pretty much follow this new security model law that you have. And I kind of tried to dumb it down into really focusing on three primary concerns, and that is the development and implementation of an information security plan, investigate any cybersecurity events, and notify the commissioner of such events within 5 days. What's your thoughts on that? Would you agree that that's, I mean, because there's a lot in this law, and what I'm trying to figure out is, where do we start?
Yeah, I would agree. I think those are probably the big pieces of it. I came from, for those of you that don't know, I came from a military career and then stumbled into this position. I say that kind of tongue-in-cheekishly. But I was an infantry officer for 30 years, right? And I had 7 years enlisted before that. So as an infantry officer, I need to have things put into the simplest terms possible, right? So I have to be able to understand them so that they become easily implementable to me. So when I look at this law, what I thought was the best portion of it was that it defined your needs from the assessment that you make for your organization, right? So in this first part, in the development and implementation and maintenance of the plan, it's based on the risk assessment for your organization. So I don't need you to assess the risk of Allstate Insurance, right? I need for you to assess the risk of Matt's insurance agency. That's where you need to do the analysis of where your risk is, where are your vulnerabilities, what are the second and third order effects of a breach. Has somebody looked at your system to see where some of those external and internal vulnerabilities might be? And are you taking the measures that address the risk that has been assessed for your organization at your level, right? So that's the core principle of it. Do you see yourself? Can you see yourself the way that the enemy does? And are you doing the kinds of things that you need to do to protect yourself against those known vulnerabilities? That's what that first part really is.
So let me ask you a question, man. And that's one of well, first of all, I've got the sign-in sheet here. I'm going to start it over here, and this is for the second half. You just sign in and pass it around. But I want to focus a little bit here on the risk assessment, because this entire thing is all developed around risk assessment, the original risk assessment. And you elaborated it to the fact that, you know, it's like try to identify what your vulnerabilities are, your internal, external threats. How should that all be documented? Should it be documented, or should it just be, you know, it's like you pick one thing at a time? That's where I have my biggest challenges. Where do you start? I mean, because I've seen the risk assessment, right? And when you look at the risk assessments, you figure ISO has one, the Nist has a risk assessment platform, and then there's one other one I'm forgetting.
Well, you can.
CISO.
Yeah, the CIS, top 20.
Yeah, CIS.
So
okay.
in my opinion, the CIS top 20 is the easiest to understand and probably the most implementable, right? So if you're doing the first 5 things in the CIS top 20, you're going to prevent 95% of the possible breaches that you're going to have. 5 things, right? And then you knock out the rest of the 5%, which is the stuff that, and I'll go back, you said I'm going to make you walk the plank.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to make you walk the plank, but to stay on the pirate theme, I may plunder some of your gold. So, anyway, that was a bad joke too.
Folks, it's not going to get any better, okay?
Right, you know. Yeah, well, till about 1 o'clock. But yeah, it doesn't matter which one you use. Pick one, right? Just pick one, and I would strongly recommend, and I have been an adamant believer in this for very, very many years, that if you're not an expert at something, find somebody that is and partner with them, right? I love to do auto mechanic work. I love to do stuff with my hands. I would never consider myself an expert at it. If my family has to depend on it, I am going to find somebody that's going to be able to provide that service to me so that the worry falls away from me. Now, raise your hand if you are a cybersecurity expert. Every single one of you then should be partnering with a cybersecurity expert to address the needs that you have in your organization, right? And then it's just like every other service that you have to support your business. You know, don't waste time trying to repaint the walls in your office if you can be spending time making money to pay for the walls to be repainted in your office, right? So it's the same thing with cybersecurity, the same thing with information technology, is find a great partner that can help you through that piece of it. That takes one of those pieces of burden off of you. And I don't care what process you use, just so you're using one, right? If you can demonstrate that you've walked through all of these things, here's my risk assessment. We use the CIS top 20 format for risk assessment, or we use the Nist cybersecurity framework, or we used it from this organization. We used CyberFin's risk assessment template to do it. Here's what my risk is. These are my prioritized areas of risk. I've addressed the first 5 of them. My plan is to implement. We have the first 3 of these fixes underway and in place. The next 2 are planned for the next 4 months, and numbers 5, 6, and 7 will happen at the beginning of the next fiscal year.
Okay.
Okay, we're good.
So for a couple things, CIS is Center of...
Center for Information Security.
Center for Information Security. So that's a great place because those types of organizations have sample risk assessments because that's really the starting point. Also on the association's website, when you go underneath cyber insurance, they actually have a bundle of information. In one of those areas, what you will find is risk assessment questions. And it's all about trying to identify your internal and external threats and then wrapping around them some safeguards, administrative, technical, and physical safeguards wrapped around them to protect that information. That's what the computer security is all about. Here's a sample of one that I found on the internet. I wanted to be able to help people understand. When I've done risk assessments in the past, and Matt, you tell me if you've done it any other way, I generally use spreadsheets. And I use spreadsheets similar, this was similar to a concept that I would generally use. And what you do is you identify your threat, like right up here, unauthorized access, malicious or accidental, right? So we know that that is going to be one of your threats. And then you want to actually assign it. I like numerical. Some people use like different color codes and things of that nature. But I like the number system because you have to rate it. And you want to find out whether or not it's something that you need to address right away or whether or not it's something that you can kick down the road and deal with later. So when you look at the impact, what type of an impact would unauthorized access have on your organization? Well, it's going to be high, right? Because there's a good chance that you're going to wind up being shut down. What's the likelihood? Today, it's pretty high. I mean, it's growing at a very fast clip, over 400% a year. It's something that we probably want to deal with. And then you take the value of it. So you sit there and you multiply the 100 times the 1 to come up with the 100, and then that would enter into the severe category. And then what I would do is after I've identified all of the different threats, I would then prioritize them based off of the risk calculation. I'd deal with all of the severe ones right away. I would then deal with all of the elevated and move down into the lows until eventually your entire list. One thing that is very important to remember is your risk assessment, no matter how you do it and which format you use, is a living document. You just don't want to do it once and park it on a shelf. Would you agree?
Absolutely. All of this stuff, the cyber risk environment is different today than it was a year ago because of all the different things that have been mentioned throughout the morning thus far. It is a dynamic environment that changes daily. We should be in the habit of assessing and reassessing on a regular basis so that we can understand how the changes in the environment have impacted the business that we have to do.
Okay. All right. So we've discussed a little bit about that. Matt had mentioned along the lines of the whole thing is commensurate to your size. So a smaller organization may not be held to the same standards as a larger organization, as well as how it is that you're protecting the information is going to be based off of how valuable the information is or whether or not, it's like a social security number should be safeguarded more so than a date of birth. You agree? Okay. Social security number, for those of you that don't know, is basically the holy grail for all cyber thieves. So you want to wrap stronger safeguards wrapped around them. Again, it's based on the risk assessment we discussed, and it's all about these things right here. When I talk about administrative, technical, and physical safeguards, so once you identify it, I mean, you take a look at what are some administrative types of safeguards that you could wrap around things. Any examples?
You don't give everybody access to every single database in your organization. You only have access based on need.
So a lot of times the administrative is going to follow policies and procedures and things of that nature. And again, for those of you that have the insurance policy through the state association, that risk management web portal has many of those types of policies and procedures in a boilerplate method. So you don't have to create all of this. There's a ton of tools out there that you can pick and pull to create your own program that fits your needs. All right? But I just wanted you to know that the tools are available out there. How about what are some technical safeguards that would want to wrap around it?
Well, the technical are the cybersecurity types of measures that you would put into your system. It would be the multi-factor authentication, would be a technical measure. Segregating different types of systems, using a firewall for business and a firewall for general communications. So how many of you do business out of your house? Raise your hand if you do any business out of your house. Even if you take your cell phone and it connects to the Wi-Fi at your house and you answer business email. You guys are doing business from your house, all right? How many of you use the exact same Wi-Fi portal to shop on Amazon as you do to answer business email through your phone? You know that you are compromised and you just provided a threat actor a vector to get into your business, because I'm pretty sure that you don't have as high a level of a firewall on your account on your home Wi-Fi as your business might have. And when you have your cell phone from work that accesses Wi-Fi at your house and then links to the Wi-Fi at work, you've just transported across all those different domains and created an avenue for a bad guy to get into your business. So, something to think about.
And you guys remember, I mean, you're not going to go from 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds. This is it's a process, not an event. It's just important that you start somewhere and then you progress from there. How about physical safeguards? Can you give us an example of a physical safeguard?
Not only will I give you an example of a physical safeguard, I'll tell you one that I experienced personally with a friend of mine. I've got a friend that is a financial advisor, small little shop. I was talking to him about his cybersecurity needs. He says, I've got an IT guy, takes care of it, no problem. I'm just a one-person shop, it's not a big deal. As I was walking in his office, I walked into the common area, and I walked over here and I looked over to the left and I saw a closet. And in the closet was a stack of servers with a whole bunch of wires and all that kind of stuff, door wide open in a public hallway. And I said, so what's that? Oh, that's our server. Really? So how do you control access? The front door is open. Anybody can walk in. There's 5 businesses in the building, right? The hallway is adjacent to the restroom. So how many people today are walking past an open server room? And it doesn't even have to be malicious. How many of you have children? How many of your children find wires and blinking lights to be incredibly attractive? Right? So that's a physical security measure that a lot of people don't think about, is that if I've got servers in a common access room, how are you limiting access to that server farm, right? Especially if you're in a building that has shared IT services across a variety of different businesses that are in there. So this, and as John said, you don't think of this all by yourself. That's why you have professionals that come into your organization, because they can see your business and they can see your environment with a new, fresh set of eyes and see some of the things that have become invisible to you over the years.
I was talking to a client last week, and he was telling me a story about he went into his office on Saturday just to pick up some files. And when he went into the office office maintenance personnel was in his facility. And the one guy was sitting behind a computer. It was actually like in their mail room that they had. They had a computer set up in there. He was sitting there on that computer and surfing the internet on that computer. He was amazed at how he had access to that computer system. Well, sure enough, somebody had written down the username and password on a Post-it and had it there on the monitor, so he was going in and using that web access. Those are the types of physical controls that you don't normally think about, but if you just walk around and take a lap, you start looking at some different variations. So again, like I said, you got to start somewhere. These are the objectives of the information security program. So after you've identified all of your risk and created that risk assessment, you now know what it is that you're really trying to focus on protecting. If you go through it and you identify the main points, now you start creating and working towards the information security program. You'll hear this called lots of different things. You use an information security program. I've sort of grown up with it as a WISP, written information security program. Same thing. And it's what you're looking for. And these are the main objectives of my understanding of what it is you're looking. Your information security program should protect the security and confidentiality of non-public information, right? That's what this is all about. You're trying to protect it. Protect against any threats or hazards. After you identify them and you wrap those safeguards around it, now you're looking at component number 2. Protect against unauthorized access to or use of non-public information and minimize the likelihood of harm. So you see there that it's really just sort of like setting out what it is. Now, on the website, again, there is actually a boilerplate of a written information security program written for insurance agents. When the New York Department of Financial Services first implemented this in New York, the New York State Association for Independent Insurance Agents created this guide. And it's the one that we have on our website right now that you can go and access, and it will help give you the template to create your own. It's a starting point, someplace to build off of, and a very good tool to be able to utilize. Anything that you'd like to share with the objectives that I might be missing?
I would like for you to think of all of this as just a plan, right? So I believe it was Eisenhower who said, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And that really all your WISP is it's creating a plan for your business on how to address the specific series of risks. It's important, I think, to understand this as a part of business continuity and a part of business resiliency, right? If we've already talked about how long your business can be down if things go wrong. You know, if you have your worst day imaginable, you show up and you've got what we used to call the blue screen of death, and then somebody says, hey, listen, your system is locked and we want your money. That payment becomes probably one of the least of your worries, because everything after that will basically either signify business continuance or business non-existence. That's usually what happens. And something just clicked in my mind, so I'm going to share it right now. The ransom notification that you get is the thief closing the door on the way out of your office, right? Nobody breaks into your house and leaves before they steal all your good stuff. Understand that when a ransomware attack occurs, the bad guys have been in and stole all your good stuff. It's gone. They have it, right? They didn't have to photocopy it out of a file cabinet. They just took the digital copy of it out of your thing. And even if they give you access to those files back, guess what? They're out there in the wild. All right, so you are compromised. You will be compromised. The information that they stole is gone forever, and it will be used by other people for nefarious activities. Just understand that going into it, right? If you have that mindset, then you probably will be better able to go through the things that we're talking about. It'll make a little bit more sense to you, and you'll see it more as an investment in the longevity of your business rather than a cost, just a pure cost center.
Okay, so now there's lots of, I shouldn't say lots of other components. There's a couple other components that are associated with this new cybersecurity law, and we can address them, but we're kind of running out of time, and I want everybody to understand thoroughly that the really two things here at this point, and you tell me good starting points, is to start with your risk assessment, build out your written information security program, and then know if you have an insurance policy for cyber. One of the things, if you have a breach coach, and if you're part of the state association program, the breach coach is going to help you with a lot of the notification compliance that is required now. And one thing that Robin made aware is, don't think that if you have a breach, you automatically have to comply with the state notification law. What they have done during the design of this new security law is they said that the only breach notification law you have to comply with is going to be the department's notification law. You do not have to comply with the other ones, so we just focus here. And the big issue there is on the one that you guys have here in the state of Minnesota, is there's a private right of action for breach notification outside of this. And here, since you guys are part of the department one, there is no private right of action. So a little protection on your part there. And thank you for that, Robin. That's a nice little nugget that we like to have. Would you agree? I mean, if they start there and focus on those two components, it's a great way to start.
Yeah, and I guess I have a little bit of a different philosophy based on a lot of the different things that I've seen and done. In my current position, I have to enforce the regulation, right? I believe, because I was a part of the discussions at the NAIC, that this is less of a law and more of a template and an outline. That's how I would look at it. I would use this to kind of say, okay, does this give me the common sense aspect of how it is that I can best protect my business, my employees, and the people that I do business with, right? Look at it from that perspective. And use it as an outline, starting with that self-analysis. Where is it that I have my most points of vulnerability? And then assess it and address it from that perspective. When was the last time that your employees were trained on how to recognize a phishing campaign? Raise your hand if your employees went through anti-phishing campaign training. Awesome.
Raise your hand, and if you're one of the ones that opened up those emails.
So everybody gets them, right? I get about 4 of them on my cell phone a day, right? That congratulations, you know, you have won a Visa, a $50 Visa gift card. All you have to do is click on this link. Well, my wife has told me a long time ago, nobody's given me anything because of my good looks. So I know for a fact that those things are probably malicious in intent, right? But what's not as evident are the things that your people are getting through their business email on a fairly regular basis that look pretty legitimate, right? I think the Microsoft 365 ones that are out there right now to get your credentials, oh, those are vicious.
Yeah.
Because you really have to know what you're looking for to go into the BIOS of the address to figure out that it's that's a malicious sender. And it's hard to do, right? And the training aspect is one of the first things that I would ask you to consider as you're building your program is how am I going to create a whole bunch of little junior security officers in my organization, right? We want everybody to have a body of knowledge to be able to recognize some of those first things, right? How is it that I can protect me, my computer, and my mobile device? That's where I would start. Think about it from that perspective. The other thing is that these skills don't stop at the office door. These skills transpose into your everyday life, right? They help you, your spouse, your kids, be safer when they do their online activity. Because if you understand this, if your employees understand this, they can't help but now bring this back home, right? So everybody then understands a little bit more of what we've been talking about here. What are some of those basic safeguards? Where am I vulnerable? What should I not click on, right? Because that's the first point of vulnerability, us. We're the weakest link in the security chain.
Okay, before I bring up, I'm going to bring up CyberFin here in a minute to sort of tell you a little bit about some of the cybersecurity tools that they have available to help protect our agents. Anybody have any questions for Matt? Yes?
My photographic memory's not working today, so can I get a copy of this presentation?
Yes, I will make this totally available to everybody. All you have to do is just reach out to somebody from the association, tell them you want a copy. I will get a copy of it over there, and they'll have it readily available and be able to mail it out. Good point of contact. I would say don't send it to Dan. That'd be useless. Send it over to April, okay? No, Dan's not in the room to defend himself, so why am I cutting on him? Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there a good site to go to educate our employees on the phishing?
My
And
favorite.
the question was, is there a good website to go to
Yes.
to educate your employees on phishing?
My favorite resource is the Cyber and Information Security Administration, CISA.gov. My favorite one, all right? Because there are drop-down boxes for gobs and gobs of different small tidbits of information. There are awesome templates in there. They have videos that you can look at for training. They have programs for children on online security and safety. It's just, I mean, and hell, you paid for it, so why not use it, right? There's some of the folks that have worked and built on that are just, they're some of the most amazing minds that are working in this field that you're going to find. And the tools that they have put out there, I visit the site at least probably once, maybe twice a week, and I find something new. And it's like, oh, I got to pull this. You know, I've got this folder in my, just filled, it's called cybersecurity, and it's got like a couple of gigs of stuff in it that I'll, you know, but it's all online. I can go get it anyway, but I download it because I'm stupid.
Yeah, and you know, the cyber program or policy that the association has on that risk management web portal, they have training tools on there as well. And Chris, you guys have any training tools? Maybe now is a good time to introduce Chris from CyberFin.
So before Chris jumps in, I just want to say one thing, all right? Use my team at the department as a resource. Don't think of us as this big giant hammer or paddle when you do something bad, because that's not what we want, right? We want to be your partner in success. We would like to answer the questions and solve the problem before it becomes a problem. That works the best for everybody. I really don't like I don't like the administrative law courts. I don't like going there. So let's stay out of them. I don't like signing consent orders. So don't make me do it.
I don't like
right?
receiving them.
Call me first. Call me first. 651-539-1600, mncommerce.state.gov, or just use the Google machine on a secured web device. Right, and anytime. Just make sure that you call with any problems or questions.
Okay, perfect. Now, at this time, I'll bring up Chris from over at CyberFin and let them share with you what they have. Just go ahead and HDMI. Yeah.
Right? There we go. Hi. So guys, I'm going to just kick it off real quick and just explain who I am and how CyberFin kind of came about. So I've actually been in the insurance industry as a wholesaler for about 20 years. I've actually probably worked with a number of different agencies out here, or somebody in my staff has. And about 3 years ago, I was actually in the Wisconsin Dells area with a buddy of mine, and he was working in the healthcare industry and was talking to me about some of the HIPAA changes. And actually, to share a story about kind of what freaked me out was the physical aspect. He had a doctor's office that the guy had 3 laptops in the back of his car and was driving home, stopped by the gas station to use the bathroom. Somebody broke his window and took the 3 computers. And those 3 computers were taken with all their clients' data on it. And on each of those computers, none of them were encrypted. And so they pretty much have kind of thrown the book at this guy. He's got $1 million plus fines now against him. Plus, there was actually some civil stuff that was against him also from there. But I think the thing that woke me up is when my good buddy said to me, Chris, do you realize that those 3 computers could have been encrypted for about $100 each? So literally for $300 fixed it. And so I went back to our office because I work with a lot of different agencies. And I said, we really need to make sure we've got our stuff secure and we've got everything put together. And so I started doing this research into it, trying to figure out this massive mess of cybersecurity, and it was tough. I mean, we spent a lot of money and a lot of time, but we eventually got ourselves up to a point where I felt like we were pretty secure. And I just looked at it and said, hey, we need to start a company that is kind of the conduit between finding some really great resources out there and all the agencies that we work with. And that was where CyberFin basically came about. So as I was looking around, I actually came across my partner, Daniel Metcalf. And Daniel's background was in insurance, banking, and IT. And we just hit it off and realized that this is a company we could put together. But I said we needed to find a good tech stack that was easy to deliver and at the same time had like a third party that was overseeing it. Because as I work with agencies, I know you guys are busy. You have very little time to be looking at this, and especially trying to educate yourself on everything, though it's now becoming more of a process. And we were actually introduced to Michael Kennedy, who I'm actually going to have come up and talk about the tech stack. They really had implemented probably one of the best systems I saw that was per user price-wise for us. And so we wanted to kind of bring together the tech stack information and at the same time really start to understand the laws and the changes that were going on. Because I think one of the things, even for us, that I think is tough is we're in about 40 states now, and so we're trying to understand all the different regulations on it. And I think the other big issue too is when you start to look at HIPAA rules, and then if you've got firms that are securities licensed, you've got to take the SEC and FINRA stuff into it, which we've got a number of financial planners. So you can have one organization that's looking at, all 50 states plus federal plus SEC and FINRA, and so we're trying to bring all this stuff together to have a better understanding of it. But I think the big thing is the tech stack that we've put together is easy to deliver to you guys and protect you. The whole idea is to keep the cybersecurity criminals out. And I think I'm going to just use one analogy, Michael, and I'm going to have you come up and just talk about your background. It's real simple. If you're driving down your street right now in your neighborhood and you're looking at 5 houses, and you've got one house that they just left and left the doors open, The next house has got locks on it, and the third house has got a bunch of cameras and a bunch of security. The bad guys can break into all 3 buildings, correct? But which ones are they going to break into? It's going to be the last one. And that's our goal. Our goal is to put basically the systems in place so that they can prevent breaking in. And I think what Matt brought up too is that sometimes your house will get broken, even with all the things in place. And you've got to have the right WISP in place, and you've got to do the right training with your employees. And trust me, I mean, I'm talking all the time to my employees about it, and I catch them clicking on stuff. And we're in it. We're talking about it all the time. So I'm going to bring Michael up if you guys don't mind, and then I'll have Daniel talk about it. I know we're short in time with lunch here. Daniel talk about kind of how we go about implementing it. And I think we just passed out, yep, so there's a fill-out sheet if you want some more information. And then I think, do we have our, where it talks about the tech stack too? Pass that, okay, perfect, great. So I'll have Michael get up here and pass this off.
Thank you. Perfect. See if I can get this. I'm hungry, so this will be quick. I think there's another. Perfect. So Michael Kennedy, with partnership with Cyberfin. So I was at this small little insurance company that's in town for quite a few years, and worked a lot in their mergers and acquisitions, IT, networking, security, did a lot of stuff for them. As we all probably, they're not the greatest place to have a very relaxed work-life balance. And I started seeing a lot of friends and with small business owners, family members succumb to ransomware events and have this struggle in trying to figure out what to do. They called the FBI. The FBI said, "Good luck. Call us after you get it done. If you need to give us any more information, the OFAC, you can't pay them. You're just gonna have to rebuild everything, shut your doors, all these various things." And after getting, the Heartbleed or the Anthem data breach, I was working on this little program. They said, here's a $100 million check. Go deploy globally a security program that protects our acquisition space. So after being very successful at that, I decided that, we can take that same technology, that same core piece that's protecting this Fortune 6 company, and build it in a way to provide it to small, medium-sized business, to protect you guys, to protect the companies you work for, to protect my friends, my family members. So that's really the genesis, and there's more to that story, but again, I'm trying to be quick for us. There's more to the genesis of that story. It really started at Deer Camp. So the stack, the big pieces, like what everyone's kind of talked about today, is how this overwhelming sense of now, great. Now Equifax has my social security numbers. All my stuff is taken away. I mean, I'm a wide open book. My CPA gets hacked, and he has my driver's license. He has all my personal information anyway. So what are the things that we can do to kind of start this? Matt really talked a lot about how you can just start this. Take some of the things, I was talking to Daniel before, I thought about stepping up here and getting everybody to pull out their phone and turning on automatic updates on your phone. So automatic patching, all that stuff is in place. You can set it on your computer. Getting these things in place, having the endpoint protection, the email, are huge. I know I talked about how easy it would be. It's like, and then I was thinking, how many people joined the Wi-Fi here today? Did you check that it wasn't me trying to get into your system? How would you guys know? So it's taking those steps. So our tools we provide, we have a 24/7 security operations center. It's a bunch of guys looking at screens so they can see if there's events going on. We have endpoint agents. We do the email protection beyond, just the little thing that, you don't have to worry about somebody trying to send you a contract or a Office 365 impersonation, because we sandbox that, and then we'll go and we'll remove it out of your computer. So if it does get through, it'll get identified and then remediated for you. The endpoint, the mobile device management, all of these different things that are layered into those top 5 controls, and actually I think it's 6, 7, and 8 too of those. Some of those fit in there. So, and I'll stop. Any questions or nope? All right. We got to keep the IT guy short. So. Yep.
Well, let's leave it here. So nothing worse than being the guy just before lunch. I'll give you that. It always seems to be me. Chris, we got to switch this. I don't know how that keeps happening. So ultimately, I have 5+ years experience in providing cyber solutions to financial services and institutions. And I met Chris, and he came up to me and he said, "There's this issue. Like I spent a whole year trying to figure this out. Can you help me out?" And I started thinking through it and started looking to it. And I started thinking to myself, what were some of the most successful ways that we were preventing breaches, that we were preventing bad guys from getting in? And that was by specifically creating programs that were simple, easy to set up and manage, but also had a third party that was actually looking at it for and proactively working on it, and not leaving it up to the business to be able to do it. So that's how we ended up partnering with Astra, because not only can they provide us a custom solution just for insurance agencies, but they could also make sure that we can get it easy and make it fit within your operation. Quickly, I started looking at it, though. There's so many different ways that we could try to protect you. We specifically picked the 3 areas that you're most vulnerable in your business. Email. We've talked about email filtering about 100 times, right? Multi-factor authentication, email filtering, things like that to make sure that your email is safe. It's not just the data of your customer inside there that's not protected. It's the back and forth emails that you have with even your own staff or maybe a potential customer, as Michael mentioned earlier. Second is internet traffic. We all know that we are both in our offices, at a house, at our customers' houses, at a business, at a local business, at the Caribou, in between one house to the next house. We're in an internet environment all the time. So we have to put the item in place that allows you to protect yourself either through firewalls or VPN, so anytime you're in the internet, your information is protected. And then lastly, it's your mobile devices. We've talked about it. You just mentioned 2 items right there. We actually put mobile device management, make it so that you can separate between what you want to do personally on your phone through Amazon and what you want to do through business and not have to worry about it. So it's one of your own channels to be able to go back and forth, not say, "Oh, am I on the right Wi-Fi or not?" We put those protections in place. Make it simple, because nothing's ever easy when it comes to cybersecurity, but we make it simple. So simple, and we'll get you back to lunch, is we're offering 3 things while we're here with the MIAB. Did it show up? All right, so we have 3 offers. We have an introductory offer. I already sent it out to you. We are doing a no obligation, no cost cyber self-check. Whether you come to the booth today that we're here or you want to sign up for a later time, 15 to 30 minutes, we'll walk you through a self-check of, God, I'm not sure if I'm protected or not. I'm not sure where I'm at. We'll go through and we'll actually find out where those vulnerabilities are for you. Also, as part of the MIAB for the expo itself, if you haven't already taken advantage of the do-it-yourself WISP program, the Information Security Program, we're actually offering one that we've already done it for you, and we can walk you through it. We can actually go through the different pieces of it. It's actually HIPAA compliant. So if you're dealing with HIPAA data. And it's been used by companies like Geico, by GMAC Insurance, so you know that it's actually something that's well trusted. And we're having a deep discount on it because we want you to have it, as you already heard that there's some compliance and regulations behind it. And then all MIAB members also receive 10% off all of our services. And our services are made very simple. There's no onboarding charges. It's just a monthly fee per user, no matter how many devices. So 4 iPads, 3 computers, 2 mobile phones, that you're dealing with, it's all on the per user basis. And if you have a field office, it includes your servers and your firewalls. We'll manage it all for you, so you don't have to worry about it.